Welcome to our worship service of the Unity Temple Unitarian Universalist Congregation. It is good to gather together this Memorial Day weekend, which is different than any other. We gather at a time that's very challenging, and I'm so glad you're tuning in with us. If you're seeking connection, come join us at one of our many opportunities through the week. You can learn what they are in the e-beacon that's found at unitytemple.org. And we have a coffee hour immediately after this service. The Zoom link will be in the live chat at the end of the service. And if you would like to follow along right now with an order of service, you can go to the link that is currently in the live chat or go to unitytemple.org. Welcome. It's good to have you with us.
Good morning. My name is Julie Willoughby, and I am a member of the Board of Trustees at Unity Temple. Welcome to our virtual service. I invite you to explore our website, unitytemple.org, where you can find information about what we're up to and ways to get involved. I also invite you to join us for coffee hour, which we will do virtually through Zoom. Information will be in the chat and is also available on our website as well. I want to bring to mind this morning our values: connection, transformation, justice, and acceptance. Please enjoy the service and have a great weekend. Thank you.
We invite you to light your chalice. We are the Unitarian Universalists, the Church of the open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We take care of the planet Earth and each other.
Breathe deeply, center down, bring all of who you are, whether you are coming with joy or with sorrow, you have experienced loss or have new dreams, whether you are participating in essential services or sheltering at home. Our bodies naturally take on the stress and trauma we encounter if we don't find ways to let it go. This Memorial Day weekend provides a time for us to remember how human beings have long been cultivating hope and courage and rising over despair. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your life journey, you are welcome here. May we open our hearts, our minds, our souls as we gather for worship on this glorious day.
Love is a doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity and fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus to be covenant with each other and with God.
When I was 3 years old, my parents left me with a neighbor while they went to church with my baby sister. And the story goes that I was running around the living room with their kid and their dog, Dummer, whom I love very much. We were running around, and I tripped, and I fell, and I hit my head on the radiator and created a huge gash in my forehead. Well, if you know anything about head wounds, I was bleeding all over. They had to call my parents at church, and they took me to Ioneer Hospital for stitches, where my dad happened to be working at the time. Now, I was only 3 at the time, so I remember the part about running around the living room, and I don't really remember the rest. They sent me home with a big bandage wrapped around my head, and, because we have that picture, I remember that part. But it's a story that I think about from time to time because I still have the scar right here where it happened. It's not that noticeable anymore, but I can feel it, and I rub my finger over it every once in a while. Because I can't really remember it happening, it's just a story about something that happened to me and shaped me. I just remember the part about before I cracked my head open. I have some other scars, too, of course. I have 3 tiny ones from my appendix being taken out in December. Because that was not so long ago, I can still remember all the feelings that were part of that. How scared I was to be in so much pain and what it was like to be in so much pain. I remember being in the ER and waiting for surgery and in the hospital room afterwards. Those scars will continue to remind me of that. Skin is remarkably resilient, and for the most part, we heal remarkably well. But sometimes things leave a mark. And those marks tell a story, or they are a story. When I asked my son about scars, he thought of his leg where he was bitten by a dog a few years ago. My dad has a long scar on his face from a fall when he was a baby and he fell on a glass baby bottle, which cut him. You can hardly mention scars without thinking about Harry Potter. There's a lightning scar that he tries to hide under his hair on his forehead, and it makes him instantly recognizable to everyone around him. We all have stories about events that have shaped us, and often ones that leave scars are the harder stories. Of course, there are lots of things that happen in our lives that leave different kinds of scars. Some of them are on the inside, some that we can't see. If a dog has bitten us, for example, we might be scared for a while. If we fall off our bikes, we might have trouble getting on again, even if we didn't get physically hurt, and so on. Our spirits, just like our skin, are remarkably resilient. Skin heals well when we make sure it's clean, protect it, and let it do its work. Our spirits heal well when we share our stories, listen to one another, and let them do their work. I'm sure each one of you has interesting scars and stories to tell. I invite you to share some of these stories with each other in the week to come.
Each week we hold a space for holding each other in our hearts and for the prayers of the people. Who are you holding in your heart at this time? What prayers are you carrying? You may share them, if you wish, in the live chat at this time, and I will share what people have communicated with me this past week. Juliana Ingalls Storms is holding her 93-year-old grandmother and people like her who are living in assisted living complexes where loved ones cannot visit. John Tandrich is working hard to recover the use of his right arm after his stroke 8 weeks ago. He is scheduled to leave Rush Oak Park Hospital on June 2nd and is grateful to Caroline Skipper, who will house him and care for him upon his release. Judy Gaeta Grace writes, "My dear friend Janice, of 47 years, died a couple weeks ago. She was 83. Last Saturday, Terry and I went to Navy Pier for a tiny memorial service." Locally, the following people were reportedly killed between May 15th and May 21st. Nathaniel Watkins, age 31, Deandra Darling, 18, Jerry Montgomery, 32, Jermaine Boykin, 30, James Primer, 29, and Johnny Cox, 36. May we keep their families and others touched by violence in our prayers. May we also pray for the perpetrators and the impact the violence has on their lives as well. I am holding in my heart a dear colleague whose mother lives in a nursing home and is now COVID positive and lives with her husband, both of whom are frail. I am also holding in my heart my friend and colleague, the Reverend Ira Ackery, and his wife Margaret, both of whom are COVID positive. Pastor Ackery has asked for prayers for his congregation, Greater St. John Bible Church, located in Austin, as he quarantines for the next 2 weeks. And I ask for prayers for his health and continuing ministry.
Spirit of life and love, we give thanks for the gift of this moment, even with our hearts jumbled up with all the many emotions that are part of our days. On this Memorial Day weekend, we are mindful of all those who died in service to our country, so many we have loved and lost. Think of what it means to sacrifice to a greater cause. On this Memorial Day weekend, we are reminded of the beginning of summer, this one so different from many others, full of more routines interrupted, more new ways of doing things, perhaps more disappointments. We send fervent love and prayers to those who are helping to keep us safe and healthy and fed. May our gratitude and care enfold them and help sustain them in challenging times. May all those who are sick and dying know that they are not alone in spirit, but held closely in mind and heart. May we continue to make choices that keep ourselves and those we love safe and protected as much as possible from this virus. May we find that we all have the patience and strength and courage that we need to make it step by step through each day and week and month. And may we know that we are held by love both this day and all our days. Amen. Blessed be.
Someone told me long ago, there's a calm before the storm. I know it. It's been coming for some time. When it's over, so they say, it'll rain a sunny day. I know it. Shining down like water. I want to know, have you ever seen the rain? I want to know, have you ever seen the rain? Coming down on a sunny day.
I'm Stephen Jordan. I first encountered Unitarian Universalism in 1993 in Bakersfield, California, in the congregation where Reverend Taylor grew up. When I moved to rural Connecticut, I attended a Unitarian Universalist fellowship. About a dozen people attended Sunday worship. The fellowship had no minister, no staff, no Intro to Unitarian Universalism course. I didn't even know why we were called Unitarians, but I knew I felt at home. I could be myself without hiding. I came to Oak Park in 1994 and joined Unity Temple. It was an exciting time. Unity Temple and Beacon Church had just merged and began a period of dramatic growth. When Bonnie and I were married, I became the stepfather of her adult son who suffered from mental illness. He took medicine that controlled his illness, but when he was symptomatic, his illness brought chaos to everyone. I spent hours on the phone with his caseworker and the police trying to minimize the damage. I could see how mental illness can wreck someone's life. Not only the person who is afflicted, but also the family of that person. Bonnie and I taught the Family to Family course for NAMI. The course teaches about brain chemistry and other technical information, but to me, the most important part is the part where participants tell their stories. These stories are heartbreaking, but when people share their stories and other members of the group hear their stories, they realize they are not alone. They realize that people have stories that are even more heartbreaking than theirs. They come to see their struggle with more perspective and empathy, and they can realize that this terrible thing that has happened to them is something that they do not have to endure alone. I readily tell people that our son has a mental illness. When I share, I make eye contact and speak with a voice that does not convey embarrassment. My mother taught me that embarrassment is contagious. When people see I am not embarrassed, they are not embarrassed. Often they are comfortable enough to share their own experience with mental illness. Mental illness is painful by itself, but making it worse is the stigma associated with mental illness, because people are taught to be ashamed. But that is so unnecessary. Mental illness is a disease, like heart disease or diabetes or arthritis. It can happen to anyone. Discussing mental illness openly, without embarrassment, can eradicate the stigma. When Bonnie co-founded the Mental Health Awareness Team, My Hat, at Unity Temple, it was an opportunity for many people in our congregation to share their experiences, to hear the stories of others. When mental illness is discussed openly, the stigma evaporates. One factor that makes mental illness so scary is its mystery. You cannot get a blood test or an MRI. It is invisible. Sometimes the worst wounds are the ones that no one can see.
A forgotten part of a garden where a seed has found its way. Then the spring sun came and the warm fresh rain. Beauty can happen when the sunlight shines through. A pond beneath a footbridge where the full moon doubled her glow. The lovers sat there without any care. Dreams can happen when the moonlight shines through. Take a look around, surprise. dreams in the moonlight, wander in the starlight, when the light shines through. Amazing things can happen when the light shines
There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and says, "What the hell is water?" I take this story from David Foster Wallace, from his commencement address to the graduating class at Kenyon College in 2005. The immediate point of the story is that the most important realities are often the ones that are the hardest to see and talk about. On this Memorial Day weekend, a most obvious and important reality, often unacknowledged, is that so many people have served and sacrificed for the freedoms many of us take for granted. I don't know about you, but I completely missed a really significant milestone: the 75th anniversary of Victory Day, V-Day, the end of World War II in Europe. It occurred nearly 2 weeks ago on May 8th with little fanfare. In that war, 75 million people perished, more civilians than soldiers. The United States lost over 400,000 soldiers, while many more returned with not only physical scars, but mental scars. Since then, every war has left countless soldiers struggling with their mental health. Violence of all kinds leave people wounded more on the inside than on the outside. Mental scars aren't limited to those engaged in war or other kinds of violence. While I don't like using the language or imagery of war to talk about the COVID-19 crisis, I do resonate with talking about medical personnel and hospital staff as serving on the front lines. And some of these people are currently struggling with their own mental health. This month, as we reflect on the theme of thresholds on this Memorial Day weekend, I want to reflect on two thresholds. First, the threshold of trauma. When pain and suffering become so intense that the body holds it, buries it, so that the mind becomes largely unaware of it. There's only one problem. Suppressed and embodied trauma haunts one's life until one reaches a second threshold. The threshold of getting in touch with the trauma, reconciling the reality of the past so that it doesn't impact the future. This may be giving voice to the trauma. It may be coming to accept in a deep way that the past cannot be changed. It may lead to forgiveness. But the second threshold is the door to healing and recovery. Sometimes the worst wounds are the ones that we can't see. I'm grateful to Stephen Jordan for this insight and his commitment to destigmatizing mental illness. And I'd like to take this insight one step further. Sometimes our own worst wounds are the ones that we can't see. We don't notice them because they have lodged deep within our bodies, but they are there, like water all around us, if we are willing to pay attention. The title of Bessel van der Kolk's recent work on trauma says it all. The body keeps the score. As he says, traumatized people chronically feel unsafe inside our bodies. The past is alive in the form of gnawing interior discomfort. Our bodies are constantly bombarded by visceral warning signs, and in an attempt to control these processes, we often become expert at ignoring our gut feelings and in numbing awareness of what is played out inside. We learn to hide from our genuine selves. I agree with him. As long as you keep secrets and suppress information, you are fundamentally at war with yourself. The critical issue is allowing yourself to know what you know, and that takes an enormous amount of courage. The pain of some situations is so awful that the threshold of trauma not only gets crossed, it's as if the trauma gets lodged into the DNA. I've come to believe that the worst of trauma gets passed down through generations. The brutality of slavery, the forced relocation of people, the violence that occurs in what many say is 1/3 of all homes. The effects of such trauma for both victims and perpetrators gets passed down from generation to generation, unless the second threshold is reached, the threshold of acceptance, of awareness, of getting real, of giving voice to the trauma, whatever door opens to healing and recovery. How do we do this? Western culture has long relied on talk therapy. And while talk therapy has helped a lot of people, I'd like to suggest that there's something more fundamental to our healing. Something like what water is to fish. How does a human being begin to recognize and air out what has been submerged? Sometimes for decades. The first thing is to breathe. Would you take a deep breath with me? And again. Our breath is our connection to spirit. I can imagine a wise elder walking along and seeing two young'uns walking the other way and saying, "Good morning, boys. How's the spirit of life?" And a little bit later, one of these young'uns turning to the other and saying, "What the hell is the spirit of life?" It's everywhere. If our breath is our connection to spirit, then spiritual practice is largely about learning how to let the breath lead us, to lead us even through our depths, and simply notice the inner sensations of our bodies and how they relate to what all is going on outside of us. For me, yoga provides a profound guide. For you, it might be mindful reflection, jogging, or singing. I'd love to hear from you about the path you've discovered. Our choir director, Marty Swisher, is a renowned vocal teacher. Her approach to vocal training is all about the breath and noticing what is going on in the body. And noticing what it is, the tension that prevents one's own unique voice to come forth. And to, over time, to let that go. She's helped me understand how singing is a deeply profound spiritual practice. For the aim in singing, she tells me, it's not first and foremost the product of a beautiful voice. No, it's breathing as unencumbered as possible so as to get in touch with and bring forth what is at one's genuine core. She says that as people get older, they often learn to inhale incorrectly, disconnecting themselves from experiencing what's happening in the body. In these past couple months, Marty has noticed that even her most advanced students are needing basic breathing exercises. She says that when a singer holds a lot of tension in their body, they don't breathe naturally and don't have access to the depth and breadth of their voice. In her role as a voice teacher, she invites people to be open and to be vulnerable and to allow their humanity to manage their tension. Marty teaches sensation-based singing. How does it feel? And here's something Marty and I find is true in both our spiritual disciplines. In a daily practice, it is critical to do, even on days you don't feel like it. I appreciate how Marty says, it's not as easy as breathe deeply with me. There's a practice that's not just mental, but physical, and I'd say spiritual, that moves us to let go so that we can share the beauty that is inside us. As more and more of us move through that second threshold, we've got a responsibility to the wider world. Toni Morrison, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author of Beloved, clearly knows so much about these thresholds of trauma and healing. She shared in an article the following: Christmas, the day after, in 2004, following the presidential re-election of George W. Bush, I am staring out of the window and in an extremely dark mood, feeling helpless. Then a friend, a fellow artist, calls to wish me happy holidays. He asks, "How are you?" And instead of, "Oh, fine, and you?" I blurt out the truth. Not well. Not only am I depressed, I can't seem to work, to write. It's as though I am paralyzed, unable to write anything more in the novel I've begun. I've never felt this way before. But the election, I'm about to explain with further detail when he interrupts, shouting, "No, no, no, no! This is precisely the time when artists go to work. Not when everything is fine, but in times of dread. That's our job." I felt foolish the rest of the morning, especially when I recalled the artists who had done their work in gulags, prison cells, hospital beds, who did their work while hounded, exiled, reviled, pilloried, and those who were executed. This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilization heals. I know the world is bruised and bleeding, and though it is important not to ignore its pain, it is also critical to refuse to succumb to its malevolence. Like failure, chaos contains information that can lead to knowledge, even wisdom, like art. End of quote. I know more than one person who finds the novels of Toni Morrison a path from moving from the threshold of trauma to the threshold of healing and finding one's voice and one's place in the world. And I know veterans who have been wounded deeply, who have encountered gestures of kindness and compassion, who found their salvation in leading lives of kindness and salvation. Where are you being led? Let your body teach you. and come to know what you genuinely know. Blessed be. Amen. Each week we give our offering away to an organization that lives our values. This week we're giving to the Disabled American Veterans, promoting independence and helping veterans live into full lives. You can give directly at dav.org, send a check to Unity Temple with Disabled American Veterans in the memo line, or you can text a donation using the instructions in the live chat or using the QR code on the screen. May what you give bring you joy.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
On this Memorial Day weekend, be blessed as you take time to honor and remember the sacrifices of those who have served their highest ideals and recognize that Spirit is all around us, beckoning us to heal the wounds of pain and shame submerged within our bodies, so that we can be agents of healing, truth-telling, of compassion, and that we may dwell together in peace, seek knowledge and freedom, serve humanity and fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. May it be so, as we covenant with one another and with God. Blessed be. Amen.
Somewhere, someday.